In the next 72 hours, the world as we know it could fundamentally change. The United States just made an announcement that has sent shockwaves through every major capital from Beijing to Moscow, from Riyadh to Caracas. Washington has declared that it is prepared to, quote, run Venezuela. Not influence, not advise, not support, run. And what happens in the next 3 days will determine whether we witness the largest power grab in the Western Hemisphere since the Cold War, or the beginning of a global economic meltdown that will make 2008 look like a minor correction. Venezuela sits on 203 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, the largest on planet Earth. China has invested over $67 billion in Venezuelan infrastructure. Russia has deployed military advisors and advanced weapon systems. And now, the United States wants to take control. The next 72 hours are not just critical, they are existential. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal changes everything. Welcome back to Conflict Decoded. I'm your host, and today we are diving deep into what could become the most significant geopolitical event of 2026. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because the information in this video is time sensitive. Let's decode this conflict. On May 19th, 2025, a senior State Department official made a statement that initially went unnoticed by mainstream media. During a closed-door briefing with select journalists, the official stated, and I quote, "The United States is prepared to assume operational oversight of Venezuelan critical infrastructure, including energy production, port facilities, and financial systems, to ensure regional stability and democratic transition." Let me translate that for you. The United States just said it is ready to run Venezuela, not through proxies, not through sanctions, not through diplomatic pressure, direct operational control. This is not regime change rhetoric. This is not the usual State Department posturing. This is a declaration of intent to take over a sovereign nation's core infrastructure. Now, why is this happening right now? 3 factors have converged to create what intelligence analysts are calling the perfect storm. Factor number 1, the Maduro regime is collapsing. Nicolas Maduro's government has been on life support for years, but recent developments have accelerated the collapse. Inflation in Venezuela reached 436% in the last quarter alone. The believer is now worth less than the paper it's printed on. 94% of Venezuelans now live below the poverty line. That's up from 87% just 18 months ago. The military, Maduro's last pillar of support, is fracturing. Multiple reports from intelligence sources confirm that senior generals have been in secret communication with Washington. The regime is not falling. It has already fallen. The world just hasn't realized it yet. Factor number 2, China's debt trap is tightening. Beijing has lent Venezuela over $67 billion since 2007. These loans were secured against future oil deliveries. Here's the problem. Venezuela's oil production has collapsed from 3.5 million barrels per day in 1998 to barely 700,000 barrels per day today. China is not getting its oil, and Beijing is not happy. Intelligence reports suggest that Chinese officials have privately communicated to Washington that they would, quote, not oppose a transition as long as their economic interests are protected. This is extraordinary. China may be willing to let the United States take operational control of Venezuela in exchange for debt repayment guarantees. Factor number 3, the oil factor. And this is where it gets really interesting. Venezuela's Orinoco Belt contains the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, 203 billion barrels. That's more than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia, more than Iraq. For decades, this oil was difficult to extract, heavy crude that required specialized refineries. But new extraction technologies, developed in the last 5 years, have made Orinoco crude commercially viable at scale. Suddenly, Venezuela's oil is not just accessible, it's profitable, and Washington wants it. Now let's talk about the 72-hour timeline. Why 72 hours? Why is this window so critical? According to sources within the intelligence community, a series of coordinated events are scheduled to unfold within the next 3 days. Hour 0 to 24, the diplomatic phase. Within the first 24 hours, the Organization of American States will convene an emergency session. A resolution has already been drafted, calling for, quote, immediate international intervention to restore democratic order in Venezuela. This resolution has the support of 23 of the 35 member states. It will pass. The moment it passes, the United States gains international legal cover for direct action. Hour 24 to 48, the financial phase. Within hours of the OAS resolution, The Treasury Department will announce comprehensive sanctions on all remaining Venezuelan financial institutions. But here's the critical detail that no one is talking about. These sanctions include a provision for, quote, emergency asset seizure of Venezuelan state holdings in international markets. Venezuela has approximately $11 billion in frozen assets across U.S. and European banks, gold reserves held in London worth over $1.8 billion. All of it will be seized and transferred to a, quote, transitional administration. Hour 48 to 72, the operational phase. This is where the script gets classified. But based on military positioning analysis, here's what we can project. U.S. Southern Command has repositioned 3 carrier strike groups within operational range of Venezuelan waters. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the most advanced aircraft carrier ever built, left Norfolk Naval Base 4 days ago. Its current position is classified, but satellite analysis suggests it's heading south. Additionally, over 12,000 U.S. military personnel have been quietly deployed to Colombia over the last 6 weeks, officially for training exercises. 12,000 troops for training exercises. In a country that shares an 1,100-mile border with Venezuela, the pieces are in position. The question is not whether the United States will act. The question is, what happens when they do? And this brings us to China, because Venezuela is not just an American interest. It is a Chinese strategic priority. Since 2007, Beijing has invested over $67 billion in Venezuela. This includes $28 billion in direct loans to the Maduro government, $19 billion in oil infrastructure development, $14 billion in mining operations, particularly in the Arco Minero region, which contains one of the largest gold and coltan deposits in the world. $6 billion in telecommunications and surveillance infrastructure. China doesn't just have investments in Venezuela. China has built Venezuela's critical infrastructure. The question everyone is asking, what will Beijing do if Washington takes control? Let me break down the 3 scenarios that intelligence analysts are currently gaming out. Scenario 1, strategic acceptance. In this scenario, China accepts American control of Venezuela in exchange for guaranteed debt repayment and continued access to oil contracts. This might seem unlikely, but there's precedent. In 2019, when the U.S. recognized Juan Guaido as Venezuela's legitimate president, China's response was notably muted. No military threats, no economic retaliation. Beijing's calculus was simple. Venezuela's oil was not worth a direct confrontation with Washington. That calculus may still hold today. Probability, 35%. Scenario 2, economic warfare. In this scenario, China responds not with military force, but with economic weapons. Beijing could immediately dump its remaining U.S. Treasury holdings, approximately $750 billion. It could accelerate de-dollarization across BRICS nations. It could impose secondary sanctions on any company doing business with both China and the new Venezuelan administration. This would not save Venezuela, but it would ensure that America pays a massive economic price for its actions. Probability, 45%. Scenario 3, direct confrontation. This is the nightmare scenario. In this scenario, China views American control of Venezuela as an unacceptable threat to its global interests. Chinese naval vessels, currently positioned in the Atlantic for routine exercises, could move to intercept American military assets. The People's Liberation Army could activate sleeper military advisors already embedded in Venezuela. Chinese cyber units could launch attacks on American financial infrastructure. This scenario risks escalation to a level not seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Probability, 20%. But 20% is not zero. And in geopolitics, 20% probabilities to have a way of becoming reality. Now let's talk about what this means for you. Because regardless of which scenario unfolds, one thing is guaranteed. Oil prices are about to explode. Venezuela currently produces approximately 700,000 barrels of oil per day. That's down from a peak of 3.5 million. But even this reduced output is critical to global markets. Here's why. Venezuela's oil primarily goes to 2 destinations, China and India. If American control disrupts these flows, even temporarily, both nations will be forced to seek alternative supplies. That means increased competition for Saudi, Russian, and Iraqi crude. That means upward pressure on global oil prices. That means higher costs for everything. Current projections from energy analysts suggest the following. If transition is smooth, scenario 1, oil prices rise to $95 to $105 per barrel. If economic warfare occurs, scenario 2, oil prices spike to $120 to $140 per barrel. If direct confrontation occurs, scenario 3, oil prices could exceed $180 per barrel. For context, the last time oil hit $140 in 2008, the global economy collapsed. At $180, we are looking at economic devastation not seen since the Great Depression. And here's the part that should terrify you. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve, America's emergency oil stockpile, is at its lowest level since 1983, 367 million barrels. That sounds like a lot, until you realize that America consumes 20 million barrels per day. The SPR could sustain American consumption for 18 days. 18 days. After that, America would be entirely dependent on foreign oil, at whatever price the market demands. The stakes of the next 72 hours are not just geopolitical, they are economic. They are existential. But there's one more factor we need to discuss. The power vacuum. Let's assume, for a moment, that America successfully takes operational control of Venezuela. Maduro flees, the regime collapses, American-backed administrators take over. Then what? History teaches us that power vacuums are never filled peacefully. Let me give you 3 examples. Iraq, 2003. American forces toppled Saddam Hussein in 21 days. The resulting power vacuum created ISIS, killed over 200,000 civilians, and cost the United States over $2 trillion. Libya, 2011. NATO forces helped overthrow Muammar Gaddafi. Today, Libya has 3 competing governments, open slave markets, and has become a staging ground for terrorism across North Africa. Afghanistan, 2021. After 20 years of American occupation, the Taliban recaptured Kabul in 11 days. $2 trillion, 2,400 American lives, 20 years. All erased in less than 2 weeks. Venezuela would be worse. Here's why. Venezuela has multiple armed factions that would immediately compete for power. The Colectivos, pro-Maduro armed militias numbering over 100,000 fighters. The ELN, Colombian guerrilla fighters who have established deep networks in Venezuelan border regions. Dissident FARC factions, former Colombian rebels who rejected the peace process and now operate freely in Venezuela. Criminal organizations, drug trafficking cartels that control entire regions of the country. Military factions, Venezuelan generals who would resist any foreign occupation. If Maduro falls, these groups don't disappear. They compete. They fight. They create chaos. And chaos in a country with the world's largest oil reserves, sitting directly on America's doorstep, next to Colombia, connected to the Caribbean drug routes. That chaos doesn't stay contained. It spreads. So where does this leave us? In the next 72 hours, the United States may attempt the largest geopolitical operation in the Western Hemisphere since the Cold War. The outcomes are uncertain. The risks are enormous. The consequences will be felt by everyone. Let me summarize what we know. Number 1, the United States has signaled intent to take operational control of Venezuelan critical infrastructure. Number 2, China has over $67 billion invested in Venezuela and will not accept American control without response. Number 3, oil prices will spike regardless of outcome, potentially triggering global economic disruption. Number 4, any power vacuum in Venezuela risks creating a failed state on America's doorstep, with consequences that could last decades. Number 5, the next 72 hours will determine which path the world takes. I want to be clear about something. This video is not advocacy. This is not cheerleading for any outcome. This is analysis. Cold, hard analysis. The world is entering a period of unprecedented geopolitical volatility. The decisions made in the next 3 days by leaders in Washington, Beijing, and Caracas will shape the global order for the next generation. You need to understand what's happening. You need to prepare for what's coming. And you need to stay informed. That's why I do this. That's why Conflict Decoded exists. To give you the analysis that mainstream media won't provide. To decode the conflicts that will define our future. If this video helped you understand the Venezuela situation, hit that subscribe button. If you want to stay ahead of these developments, turn on notifications. Because in the next 72 hours, everything could change. And when it does, you'll hear it here first. This is Conflict Decoded. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.